what happens everywhere else that institutes rent control is not going to happen here. People are going to build less. And so our housing crisis is going to get even worse. And then in Washington state, the cap is now 7%. And so what renters are going to see is an annual just cut and paste 7% increase, 7% increase, 7% increase from landlords. And you guys know this by now. We've talked about it a lot. So given that Bob Ferguson has now signed rent control, we've talked almost every week with Sean Flynn of the Rental Housing Association of Washington, which represents landlords, about this issue. And he and I were both holding out hope that Bob Ferguson would veto it, only to come to find out that Bob Ferguson supported it all along. So I asked Sean Flynn about that revelation. Sean Flynn, welcome back to Undivided.
Hey, thanks for having me.
When I'm right, I'm right. Bob Ferguson didn't have the cojones to do what's right. I knew it.
Yeah, I hate to say it, but Brandi, you were correct in the great Brandi Sean debate of whether Bob Ferguson would have the courage to veto the bill. I wanted to believe. I'll admit, I believed him when he said he wanted to build 200,000 net units in his first term, and I just... you were correct. He did. In the end, he caved to the far left, and maybe he was always far left to begin with. Not only do I hate losing the debate to you, but it's deeply disappointing for the industry.
And we'll talk about obviously the impacts and the concerns sort of moving forward. But what was it like for you to read that, according to Democratic lawmakers, that Bob Ferguson has supported the idea of rent control the whole session? So while we're on sort of wishful thinking, he actually had already told them in the second week of the session that he supported rent control.
Yeah, that article was tough for the industry and tough for us here at RHA. He looked like he was going to govern the way he ran, which was as a moderate. And when the rubber met the road and behind the scenes, he was saying, no, I'm with the ultra progressives supporting policies that have never worked anywhere. You're already seeing folks getting rent increases that they would not have otherwise got. This thing will be a slow motion train wreck.
Talking about the immediate reaction, I mean, I've even seen on my channels, and we have commenters who watch the live show who have said, that's it, I'm selling my rental units, and had sort of been thinking about it anyway because of all the other anti-landlord policies. So I'm assuming you've heard a lot of that as well.
Oh, yeah. The request for the 90-day notice for to sell the property form has gone up dramatically in my office. But at the same time, we're seeing a lot of folks join the Rental Housing Association because they're realizing that in order to survive this regulatory environment, that they need help from an org like RHA. So while some folks are leaving the industry and thus the org, we also have a large influx of folks who realize that they can no longer go it alone with the government that's currently in power in the state of Washington, who clearly views them as an enemy.
Yeah, as we've said repeatedly, I mean, rent control's never worked anywhere. It's always been disastrous. And I don't know if you saw this headline out of Minneapolis this week. St. Paul. They've walked back rent control to a certain extent. So they've now said, okay, that didn't work very well. So now all properties built after 2004 are exempt from their rent control policy there. And it just shows you, I mean, it has negative consequences. How long do you think it will be before in Washington state that becomes very apparent that it's a failed policy?
Well, I mean, I think it's apparent that it's a failed policy now, even in the fact that it's passed not that long ago, and already we're seeing the inverse reaction. The question isn't how long it takes for it to be shown as a failed policy. It's how long do policymakers take to accept the facts on the ground.
Yeah.
And honestly, I'm not optimistic about that because the majority party is, often touted as the party that follows the science, and yet it will not follow economic science on this topic. We all know that this policy leads to rents going up, not down. And so when that happens, I have deep concerns that the ultra progressives will say, oh, look, it's just not working. We need to move the cap lower.
Yeah, you mentioned it there, but I think probably we've been doing these segments with you guys, for I don't know, a year or so now. And I think it's more important than ever that landlords who are trying to go at their own get with RHA and be part of a group on this as you guys try to push back. So if there's a landlord very concerned and they're not a member of RHA, what can you help them with if they become a member?
Oh, RHA's got a massive form library to keep you up to date on all of the required forms you need to be giving your tenant, both at lease signing and throughout the lease. And those are getting more and more every day. In fact, this bill itself has special magic language you have to use at lease renewal. RHA already has a form for that for our members. We host a spring workshop every year, and this year we're doing 3 of them around the state to keep people educated on the changes and how to best operate their rental business. And then we also have an Engage seminar in the fall. It's a 2-day event this year. In fact, I think you spoke at the last one, and
Yep.
I believe you'll be speaking at the next one. Even before this bill passed, it's crazy to attempt to navigate rental housing in the state of Washington without the Rental Housing Association. You are just waiting to fall into the many traps that our policymakers have built for you. And when you fall in those traps, it is very expensive to get out. So please join the org and let us help you avoid those pitfalls.
Yeah. Yeah. And we appreciate the work you guys are doing behind the scenes and publicly. And next time, you'll just listen to me when I tell you Bob Ferguson's hopeless, completely hopeless.
Yeah, I know. I hate to admit it. I really had faith. I hope that he finds some courage in other places, but I'm not hopeful at this point.